back when we first met, and even before then, when you were just starting to think about Nia, what was your vision, and what's the journey been like for you? How have you executed on that vision almost 10 years ago?
Well, one, I just want to back up and say thank you so much to Patience, to Ruth, and to everyone on the screen, gathering with such powerful women doing such meaningful work in the world means so much to me. So having the opportunity to have this conversation and to talk shop a little bit with one of my heroes is really exciting today. So just to back up and say, it was great to meet Ruth, because there are a lot of women that are interested once they know. I mean, that's the great part about women, is that once you kind of float out the concept that the money we invest in the world matters, and that our own money can make a difference, and that we actually get the economy we invest into, women kind of go, oh yeah, I want to do that. But Ruth was like 7 or 8 leaps ahead in saying, oh, let's look at the systems. Let's look at this. What if we do it this way? And so anyway, to be in collaboration and just be a colleague of yours during these years has been exciting, because as you know, women are few and far between. And so I, got into this, probably the stars just aligned, but I had grown up in a trading firm, and where the mantra at the dinner table was buy low and sell high as often as one possibly could. And that didn't, that we were able to harness the financial markets for financial gain, very well. And yet I really wanted to make a difference in the world. And I became a classroom teacher for many years. And it wasn't until we sold that trading firm where I really was able to back up and say, what are we going to do next? And also we had a do not compete. So it was, we weren't going to be trading anymore. What was next? And I knew that we could harness the financial markets for financial gain. Could we also make a difference? Could we harness them for social and environmental gains? And so I was in charge of the family foundation when we moved it to be the first 100% impact invested foundation in 2007. And yet we weren't in public markets at all. And I hadn't found anything that met my values, or I felt like would make the financial returns and the difference that I wanted to make. And so it was really just looking around to find out who was doing the best job in public markets. And I looked at every possible offering. And then I was like, oh, okay, here we go. It doesn't exist. So I'm going to start Nia. And so Nia means intention and purpose. And that's really what we do all day, is try to make the most purpose-driven decisions with every dollar.
Can you share some stories of some of your early and most successful investments?
Sure. So on the public market side, it's always how we define success. I think, of course, when we are looking at, we like anyone, but particularly us, like a good deal, so we want to discover some companies that are maybe not appreciated yet by today's market and today's traders. And I will just mention that today's traders, like traders of all time, have been more than 99% white male. And so it's interesting to be able to come with a lens that is different than that when we're looking at companies. Particularly, we are buy and hold and long-term investors. So very much thinking about this as almost like private equity play in the public markets, because we're looking at companies early, we're getting to know management, and that's actually part of our theory of change, as well as our activism, is really getting in and asking some of the hard questions that we believe will help companies be better. So I guess, while I don't consider it a win on my side, because it means I have to go out and do more work and find new companies, but we did have 3 companies that we invested in really early enter the S&P. So that means that we had our thesis was good. We knew that we were investing in the strong ones. And so a few that have entered the S&P just in the last year, Etsy. One of the reasons we love Etsy is over 80% of their sellers are women. They were stay-at-home, businesses before the COVID hit. And then when we needed masks and all of the others, and when it the world started to wake up that, where we purchase our things matters, they've really been doing well. And one of the things about Etsy that fits for this conversation is that of all the small players, they do such a good job with creating a positive and inclusive workplace environment that they're actually able to attract and retain top talent, whereas a lot of the other tech firms struggle with that. So Nia's here to help with best practices. So we do have regular conversations with Etsy and the rest of our companies on that. Another one that entered the S&P recently is Moderna. So, and of course, currently on the global stage for the pandemic, although some really interesting different remedies and solutions in their pipeline that will be making it through the FDA in the future years as well. And then I guess I would just say, what is a success? Of course, we need to make our clients money. That is significantly what we need to do. We're also here to change the face of finance and of corporate America. So other wins are when we have shareholder engagements and, bringing, not only voting our proxies in alignment with what we need to see in the world, we're also having these strategic conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion at all of our companies. And then when conversations aren't going maybe as quickly as or as productively as we would like, we then use the shareholder resolution. And we've had some significant wins on that side too.
I want to hear about those, but I also want to, the slide, Sophie, that you took it down, I think, just to point out your performance as a fund. Can you just walk us through the slide a bit?
Oh, sure. Okay. Well, so thank you for showing this. So this is, I'll just point out that, of course, we have to show you our performance against something so you can see what this means. We aren't trying to have a standard benchmark. So you'll see on this slide that we're using the MSCI ACWI, which is an all-world index. It has over 8,000 companies in it across the globe. And then, of course, the S&P 500, which, as you all know, has, our 500 US largest companies. So we're not trying to be either of those. We are cap size agnostic. We will go anywhere across the globe to find solutions. Of course, all of our companies have diversity in leadership and at least some level, and then we engage with them to hope to increase that. We don't have any companies. Well, that's not true. We're engaging with all of our companies because most of our companies do have a long way to go still in that representation. All of our companies do have pipelines, products, and services that are addressing our global systemic risks. So everything from healthcare to sustainable planet to financial inclusion, we're really looking for those companies that are working on purpose. And so that makes us pretty different than any of the benchmarks. And yet in our financial industry, you have to, you got to talk about and be compared to a benchmark. So we offer those as comparison. I just have to say that. And then I think the returns speak for themselves. This strategy works, so we have been doing this. We're actually going to celebrate our 6th year of this particular portfolio next month in December. And investing at the intersection of environmental sustainability and social justice.
Amazing. And, Kristin, when I started on my journey as an impact investor, both for Tara Health and also for my personal portfolio, I was looking at funds that called themselves gender focused, and they all were pretty much limited to women in leadership as their sole metric. And I just thought that was great, but totally inadequate. And the way that you have this comprehensive approach to your companies. Etsy, I think, is a great example, a company that may have diverse leadership, but also it's the folks who are implementing and innovating are the ones who are the most impacted by the problems that need to be solved. In this case, how do you get direct to consumer products, that individual sellers can bring to the market. What a great story. Tell us a little bit more about how you think about your portfolio and some of the other, you've talked about the workplace, you've talked about, tell us about the communities. I know you've done quite a bit of work in Oakland and your hometown. What does that look like for you? How do you bring your community into your portfolio?
Well, so I so appreciate your asking that, and there isn't so much on the publicly traded side that we get to do. So that work really came first, and it's really paramount to us. What we do on the grant side is, of course, invest into our local community, and we also do it on the private side. So we are investing in women of color led businesses in Oakland. And now, as we grow the Nia platform, we're really helping to empower women and people of color in our local community to see themselves as investors. And so our big project, and SEC willing, fingers crossed, we'll be launching the Nia Mutual Fund in Q1 of next year. And so we see that as a tool to help empower those so that they can have a transparent, easy to understand way to invest and grow their own wealth. Because when women and people of color are have more wealth and see themselves as sitting at those decision-making tables, we see that as a win-win for everybody. So that's something that will be increasing in our Oakland community. And I just want to stop and turn the tables a little bit because I have so many questions for Ruth. And for those that don't know, Ruth was actually one of Nia's first investors. And that makes a huge difference because we didn't have a performance slide that looked like that when Ruth came in. You know, Ruth had several conversations with me, and you know, for just to get into the financial industry, you know, first they say you need a 3-year track record, then they say you need a 5-year track record, then you need to have 500 million under management to be considered here or there or whatever. So the barriers to just doing something creative in our industry, or new or different, or just anything in our industry, are huge. And for women, they're just that much higher. And so for Ruth to come in at an early stage without a track record or a team behind, I mean, of course I had a team, but it, you know, it was a small team, and it was an idea and a large amount of conviction. And so, you know, Ruth, you really made a big difference. And the other thing that you did was introduce me to your advisors at some of the big players, and just say, you know, this is a type of thing that she as an investor was interested in. And it was too new. We were too small, we were too new. And yet she set the seeds so that when we do make those numbers and can go back, you know, she really did set us up for success. And that is how our world will change, with investors saying what they want. That's really how the entire industry changes. So you are, you know, just big kudos for being out in front. And I guess I'll just ask, why did you invest in Nia so long ago?
Well, for all the reasons you said, and I think it was a risk, of course, and it certainly is wonderful to have the capital that you can take risks, and you didn't have the track record, but your strategy made so much sense to me. And we had done a fair amount of research at Tara Health to better understand the intersections that you're referring to. And we commissioned work, for instance, at the Center for High Impact Philanthropy with the XX Factor, and at Wharton with a report called for Women, where we really wanted to understand the evidence around what makes for a good company. How do we want to define a good company for women? And the landscape and the evidence that was coming through in terms of health and education and economic empowerment and safety and job satisfaction and pay equity and leadership throughout the company, not just at the top. Those were all principles that you were embracing as well. And so it just felt that the stars were aligned. And I also really appreciated how you track your performance and how you think about those measures and pull them all the way through. I think it's tempting to be just kind of go with your heart, but I think you also go quite strongly with your brain, and you don't just act impulsively. You actually think about your strategy really, really smartly. So those are all the things that attracted me to Nia, and been really grateful for it. At Tara Health, and certainly in my personal portfolio, we expect our investments to perform at market. You know, if we're making a below market decision, then we categorize it as such, and most of our portfolio is not. That, you know, we do expect it to perform, and we want to make as much money as we can, so we have that much more to give away. And so once again, really grateful, Kristin, for your performance. One other thing, and this is a nod to a couple of folks who are on the call, that when we think about our portfolio across all asset classes, we want to attract the best financial engineers we can. And whether that's at Merrill Lynch or at Ria Ventures or at Wowie, we're always thinking about the talent. And certainly, Kristin, you fall into that category as well. And then the social constraints that we care about are somewhat secondary, that someone who's a good financial analyst should be able to work within the landscape and the social parameters that the asset owner wants to apply. So I think you're a great example of that. Tell us a little bit more about, in your case, Kristin, how you think about, if you're evaluating a portfolio, how do you know that it's, what's your secret sauce? What is it that that brings you to a deal?
What brings us to a deal? So with the publicly traded companies, we're definitely looking for that intersection, right? Where we have our 6 solution themes. And so I'll just say I developed those in 2012. And really what that is just systems thinking and backing up from what is needed for people and planet to not only survive, but to thrive together. And so what is it going to take? And we're going to need to have stop extracting from our earth and communities and start using the regenerable resources that we have, and then also investing in communities in addition to renewable energies and things like that. And we're going to need to solve some of our biggest healthcare issues. We're going to need to solve some of our, hopefully all of our inequality issues, as we move forward. Natural and organic foods and healthy soils, so really just looking across what really matters. And then of course, what will the public markets reward for? And, and then of course, who has the best solutions, who has the best IP, and then who's able to build those best teams to really execute on these ideas. In 2013, the UN put out the Sustainable Development Goals. And of course, there are 17 of those. But when you look at them, they overlap with the Nia solution themes. And, I wasn't at that table, wasn't invited, and nor were they invited to the Nia table, when we did ours. And yet clearly we had studied the same systems thinking, because it really comes to what is needed and how are we going to address these. I was actually on an investor call yesterday where these 3, let's call it status quo industry investors were talking about how the Sustainable Development Goals were nice, but they weren't really all relevant to investors. And I was like, okay, well, I'll see you at the performance chart then, because you're clearly not incorporating what is really going to matter and what is material to investors. So, and I was just listening to the call. I didn't get to actually ask that question or make that statement, but that certainly is something that really matters to us. And I would say, I started this and I started with the gender focus because having full diversity in leadership didn't seem genuine or authentic when we already eliminate over 50% of the companies we look at because they don't have women in leadership. And so how are we going to get to the rest of what really matters? And my educational background in my previous career in education for social change really embraced and embodied critical race theory. And so I've kind of been having that sit on a shelf for a long time. And in the last couple of years, particularly with our activism and how we've seen that we're able to use our investor voice to move companies, to get them thinking about diversity, to get them appointing chief diversity officers, to get out that diversity report, and then also hopefully along the line, really put in practices that will help attract and retain diverse talent, which of course leads to more IP and more return on investment. And, there's all sorts of metrics that I think most of the people on the screen know that, that diversity isn't just the right thing to do. It actually makes business sense. And so at any rate, with all of our traction there, we are actually putting out the first US strategy that will be a racial justice strategy. And while we're not going to be able to have the full diversity in leadership with Black and brown people leading to start, we know that we can use our investor voice to leverage and platform that out as a message. So we're excited about that coming too.
Can I ask, in addition to the leadership of the companies in that portfolio, what other sorts of criteria will you be looking at?
Yes, so similar, we're going to be using our same solution themes, which are our eternal themes, although really looking at those again with another slice of racial justice. And so when it comes to our healthcare bucket, we're already on the Nia Global Solutions side looking at women and people of color in health. And so this will be specifically women of color and then people of color, so health issues. So one topic area that was easy for us to dive into, which is already included partially in the Nia Global Solutions, is sickle cell, which affects primarily Black Americans. Where it gets tricky is, say we have our top 5 companies working on sickle cell, addressing it. Some of them have 0 people of color in leadership. And so how do you balance out the risks, the rewards, the potential of really addressing a disease that's really important to a certain community when that community is not represented in the company leadership? So then we'll devise a strategy before investing about what will conversations look like. But partly we like to start when there's at least a hint of a commitment to diversity, and then we can build off that and improve and kind of push them a little bit further. To start with 0, so these are some of the internal questions we're having. Then there's other companies that are already working on financial inclusion. And so we then go to them. So already products and services look like they could be addressing some of our inequalities as far as financial inclusion in particularly in our finance sector. Then we'll go to them and really use, again, the power of our voice. And it's growing, of course. It's small now, and yet no other investors are asking these questions. So it's planting the seed about what are you doing for Black Lives Matter specifically within your own organization and then also in your communities. And then getting them to think about that and getting a company-wide answer on that is helping us. So that's how we're thinking about it, and it's still evolving as far as we don't have set criteria because similarly with the Nia Global on the gender side, we'll probably set a low bar and then try to increase from there.
That sounds great. Otherwise, you would have like one company in your portfolio. You have to have a, but the way you think about engagement and activism within the portfolio is marvelous. I have Elizabeth asked a question about how transparent your portfolio is. Are you able to share? How are there your strategies on your website? How can people learn more?
Oh, sure. Okay, so the fact sheet is downloadable on the website, Nia Impact Capital, and that will show you the top 10. And then when we publish the mutual fund in the new year, we'll make the entire list, available. Right now, you need to write us and sign an NDA, and then we'll send, then my team will send out the full list.
Wonderful. So how do you think about scaling? You talked a little bit about some of the struggles as you're growing and some of the catch-22s in the industry that you can't, if you're a first-time manager or you're not big enough, then all the barriers to growth. How are you thinking about scaling, and what are your milestones for that?
Okay, well, I so appreciate your asking and just giving voice to this issue that, the Knight Foundation did this study. Many are probably familiar with it. They commissioned Harvard Business School to do the study, and women and people of color combined manage about 1% of the 70 trillion out there. And that number hasn't changed in a long time. And that is women owned businesses. So, and that's only 50%. So that's how they're considering majority owned. So at any rate, it's, there's some significant barriers and a lot of status quo, and really, I would say, that's one of our biggest things is we need to grow. And I don't want us to measure our growth in a traditional way, which is by AUM, so assets under management. And yet those are also our milestones, because the more assets under management, the more hiring we can do and the more training we can do. We have a Change the Face of Finance internship program, and we really want to attract, train, and make it not only viable, but really exciting for women and people of color to come into this industry. And we've had some interesting feedback so far, just that, they do a pre-NIA survey, and then at the end of their summer or semester with us, they do a post-NIA. And some of the feedback we're getting is that, pre-NIA, many of these young women were thinking about going into a nonprofit sector because of their values. And then post-NIA, they now know they can go into business and bring their values with them. So whether they go into financial management or anything else, we feel like we are making a difference about how women are thinking about business. So we're really excited about that. So we do have to grow. We're at about 470 million today. I haven't looked at the markets yet, so about that. And for many of the pensions, like, for example, my retirement is in CalSTRS, which is the California teachers. To be considered there, you have to meet 500 first before you can, reach their screens. So then really, I think scaling, putting our mutual fund out, that will for us mean that we've been able to democratize this movement and really be able to welcome in investors at a minimum of $1,000. That'll be exciting. And then also getting this type of a product into 401ks. So where most people are investing in their 401k, they're just not checking it because there's nothing, it doesn't really make sense. There's a lot of kind of ticker symbols, but what's behind them, and is that fixed income, and what is fixed income anyway? And what, so to be able to have an educational program that goes with that, what we found is that once you have NIA in this case, your IRA, because we're not available in 401ks yet until we have that mutual fund. Once you have NIA, people are excited about it and they check it and then they add to it. And so if women and people of color are checking their retirement and are excited about it and adding to it, that will be part of us scaling and really changing the way people think about investing. And then, of course, our voice gets louder with our corporations, so while they're taking our calls now, I think that it'll just be that much easier to say, hey, have you looked at forced arbitration? Do you know that it's associated with both sexual harassment and racial discrimination and could be preventing you from really creating the most inclusive environment? And, anyway, those conversations I think will go well. We're actually working on that at the federal policy level, and that is a bipartisan bill now that has left the Senate committee successfully. So I kind of think that will become a bill, and maybe we'll shift our activism to other things. But at any rate, the scaling enables us to do each of these arms. And then we also have a granting program. So of course, the more money coming in, the more we can spend on the local grants as well.
So Kristin, you mentioned the women who come through your internship program, and a lot of your clients obviously are women. How are you doing with the other gender? Do you have many male clients? Because we know that there's quite a bit of capital out there that's still being controlled by men. Maybe not forever, but certainly for now.
Well, so that's certainly true. I would say women are attracted to us. We resonate, the values orientation, and I think just the smart investing where they're, us moving away from the index that just has, 500 or 8,000, companies to something that's more concentrated, that's more manageable, that's more, you can actually own what you own because you know what you own. And then ideally be proud of every single company that you own. So I think that's been really appealing to women. I think the circular economy premises that we embrace are appealing to women. And yet with these financial returns, and I mean, it's not always just like this, but it is like this. So the men are attracted to the financial returns. And of course, we can't promise that always, the thesis is playing out, and we're very pleased with that. And yet, and of course, there's men that want green investments as well. They're just not as quick to, go with a women manager to do that.
Do you think there's a right strategy for for increasing the number of male clients that you have? Have you found
So there definitely are. So if I were to get a co-founder who's a man, and then also we could redo our marketing materials and really lead with financial gains, that we could lead with that. And and it gets thrown out on the table, like, why don't we have 2 presentation decks? And
yes.
and we could do that. There's just this piece of like integrity. I wouldn't be able to talk about it because you can hear my passion coming out for all the change that we want to make. And, we're grateful to be able to provide returns as well. But I think there's definitely something that we can do that we're probably not, fully capitalizing on now, although the markets are big. And if we just empower more women and people of color to be investing with their values, that'll be enough. And we welcome everybody. We really do.